Before we call this meeting to order, as a reminder, the public can call in or log on to listen to board meetings live. So please make sure to speak clearly into the microphone so that people listening online can hear. Presenters and any people testifying, please clearly state your name and position before starting. This meeting is called to order at 9:32. We'll be taking an agenda item out of order. We'll be taking agenda item 5A, committee action on the Department of Education's annual financial and sync audit for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2016. Before we take action, we will accept public testimony on this item. Do we have any public testimony on agenda 5A today?
Not at this time, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Tina. If there is no public testimony, I would like to call on NK CPAs to provide the presentation on this agenda item. Welcome.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Lawrence Chu. I'm the principal in charge of conducting the audit. And to my right is Carol Lee. She's the senior manager involved with the audit of the Department of Education.
What was Carol's last name? Lee? Oh, L-E-E. Thank you.
Thank you for taking the opportunity to have us present to you. I'd like to kind of briefly go over the objectives of the audit and then also the summary of our results of the audit. So if you have the copy of the audit report in front of you, on page I, which is kind of like 3 pages in, it basically summarizes the organization of our report into 6 parts, and this is double I, excuse me, into 6 parts. So part 1 is our opinion on the basic financial statements. Part 2, we do a report on internal control of our financial reporting. Part 3 is our report on compliance with each major program. So that's kind of like previously known as the single audit, and now it's under the uniform guidance. Part 4 is the schedule of findings and question costs. Part 5 is the departmental response and their corrective actions. And part 6 is the summary of prior year findings. If you turn to page 55, 55 has the summary of the audit of the results. So the first item is on the financial statements. So we issued an unmodified opinion on the financial statements of the Department of Education. With respect to internal control over financial reporting, there were no material weaknesses identified. However, there were 2 significant deficiencies identified, which Carol will cover. In terms of non-compliance material to financial statements, there are none noted. The second section is with respect to the federal awards, which is the audit of the major federal programs in compliance with the uniform guidance. And there were no material weaknesses identified. Significant deficiencies, there were none reported, and our opinion was an unmodified opinion. And there were no audit findings that were required to be disclosed. Below that are the major programs that we looked at. So there were 4 major programs we looked at: the Child Nutrition Cluster, Child Adult Care Food Program, Impact Aid, and also the grants for state assessments and related activities. So when we go through this single audit or uniform guidance, we go through risk assessment in accordance with the guidance between what they call Type A and Type B programs, and the threshold, it's a quantitative threshold. In this case, it's $3 million. So anything over 3 million is a type A, and below 3 million is a type B. And this year, the department did not qualify as a low-risk auditee, which means then we need to get a 40% coverage on all the scheduled federal expenditures. So we need to kind of audit 40% of the total of the federal expenditures.
What's the criteria for qualifying as a low-risk auditee? What's the guidelines for that?
Well, there's about, I believe there's like 5 items. One is with respect to the financial statement audit. It would have to be like an unmodified opinion within the last 2 years, which the department had. No material weaknesses, which the department also had. However, the one that the department didn't have was back in June of 2014. There was a material weakness on one of the major programs. So that kind of kicked them out of that. Going forward, I believe next year, they should qualify as a low-risk auditee.
Okay, so you go back, what, a year?
2 years.
2 years, I'm sorry, 2 years. Okay. Okay, thanks.
With that, I'll let Carol cover the significant deficiencies identified, and you can see that those are on page 56.
As Lars mentioned, that there were 2 findings that we have. So the first one, 2016-001, is tracking and accounting for capital assets. We found some misstatements in the capital asset amounts as reported in the financial statements. Basically, there, I guess you could say we got 3 groupies of the findings. So you kind of, on 56, if you go down to condition number 1, okay, the first one is was related to the public libraries. They reported a building about $12 million, although the construction was not completed, so they should not have recognized that building on the financial statements. And in addition, there were 3 other construction projects that were understated in cumulatively it was $173,000. Okay. The second type of finding is related to projects that's managed by the BOE, Office of Fiscal Services, the School Facilities Support Services branch. They handled basically the construction projects for the DOE, and they help identify which projects are completed in order for the accounting section to recognize whether to transfer construction projects to completed projects. And we found basically 3 types of errors within this, the type of projects that's handled by this office. The first one is that we found that there were 4 projects that was either actually completed or partially completed, but they were not identified as such, so they were not transferred. And the total cost basis for these 4 projects was $35 million, and the effect of on depreciation was $683,000 for the year. Okay, the second error that we found was that not so much well, in the sense it's an error, but it's also basically a deficiency in recognizing completed projects on a timely basis. So the DOE, they found 89 construction projects that was completed in prior years, and they recognized it in this year when it should have been recognized in the prior years. And they total to about $5 million. Okay, go on to page 57, we'll have the third finding under this office. We did a non-statistical sample in which we try to project classification between repairs and maintenance and construction in progress. We saw misclassification between the 2 categories, in which, as a net result, there was an understatement of approximately $19 million in construction in progress costs. So there was more repair and maintenance that should have been recognized. And this is just a projected amount, so this isn't an actual known hard amount. Okay, and then finally, the third type of finding, this one is related to the fixed assets system in the public school system. There was 4 additions that was overstated by approximately $1 million due to a key punch error. Usually it was off like maybe by like a digit. So let's say, for example, there was something that cost $74,000. It was input as $740,000. Along that line. Okay, now the fine that we had in the public libraries, that was caused, basically there was a new personnel and they just kind of like misunderstood the information that was being received by DAG's Public Works as far as when to recognize completed projects and amount of the cost. Okay, and then as far as those that related to the facilities branch, it's just a matter of, I guess, setting priorities and to make sure that things are timely and which, you know, due to the workload that they have, we just weren't able to provide to the county. And then as far as the ones for the fixed asset system, those are just clerical errors and it's that could have been detected in the review process, which wasn't. So overall, in effect of all these, cumulatively, public libraries, they overstated capital assets by $12 million. And the DOE, not counting the public libraries, basically understated capital assets by $4 million and depreciation by $760,000. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, Carol, when you found these errors, were your testing extended?
Yes.
And so was the result of your extended testing included in your report in these numbers that you presented to us?
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, for this year, we didn't have to restate the financial statements.
Is that because it was a single year presentation or?
Well, a single year, but also in a management discussion analysis, we would have to do a 2-year comparison, but we didn't. It was below our tolerable misstatement threshold, and we didn't have to restate it.
What is your tolerable number that you're using?
Let's see, for the government-wide, we had $9.7 million.
And that's your impact on revenues and expenses?
In general, and then not only do we take a look at just that amount too, but we also take a look at just the percentage and the overall impact
Yes,
on the
so
financial
cumulatively,
statements.
do you add it up and you come down to 9.7, or is this a single amount that you're looking at?
We take a look at the cumulative effect.
Okay. Of other adjustments as well?
Yeah, other adjustments as well.
Have you provided that sheet to us, the board, or does Amy and her group have that?
We provided the adjusting journal entries, and that was part of the attachment to a letter that we gave to the board.
To the board. But the adjusting journal entries are entries that you're booking. So I guess I'm asking, what are the entries that you passed?
Okay.
Yes, the past adjusted audit adjustments have been attached to that letter.
In the letter?
Yes.
Do we have that letter by any chance? I don't, Amy, do you recall? I don't remember seeing that, that's all. But if you don't have it, can you make, Amy or somebody, can you make sure that the committee has that? Okay, Carol, next.
So the second finding that begins on page 59, this is related to the schedule and expenditure of federal awards as far as the preparation. We found that it was missing the, sorry, that starts on page 58. We found that it was missing reporting of expenditures to subrecipients for the 21st Century Community Learning Center program, and this, which is about 1.8 million compared to a total of $13.3 million for, that was total expended to the subrecipients. This 1.8 million also accounts for about half of the expenditures for this particular program. And so basically the cause was that the DOE just didn't have a system to recognize new subrecipients and to account for those in their scheduled expenditure of federal awards. Does anybody have any questions on this?
So it looks like management did recognize there's, on page 64, there's a corrected, okay.
They have a corrective action plan for that, and also the schedule was revised to include that $1.8 million.
Is there any other things you want to mention in your presentation?
That's all for our prepared remarks. If you have any questions.
Yeah, I do. Any of the committee members have any questions on the financial statements itself? No. Well, I have several questions, and I'm not sure if you are able to answer it, but I see Amy is here, so if she can help, that would be great. But before I do that, let's do some housekeeping, because as part of our audit charter, we need to ask several questions of you to make sure that we understand what is happening. I just wanted to confirm with you that the financial statements disclose all material off-balance sheet transactions, arrangements, obligations, and relationships of the DOE. And I see that we have recorded leases, but is there anything else that you know of that have not been recorded?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Is there any significant accounting pronouncements that impact the department's financial statements that we should be aware of?
In terms of going forward, or
Any new ones, any new accounting pronouncements that affect that would impact the current?
There wasn't any that impacted materially on
Okay.
2016 financial.
there is that one on OPEB, but if the state implements it similar to how they've implemented the retirement benefits, then it wouldn't go down to the department level.
Okay, but it wouldn't impact this financial statements. It might impact future financial
Yes.
statements. Okay. Is there any significant financial and compliance risks or exposures to the department? And if there are, what steps management has taken to mitigate such risks and exposures? So the first thing is, have you identified any significant financial and compliance risks? Or exposures?
No.
No. Because you folks do go through your normal checklist of making sure things, so, but this is just something that as part of our charter, we need to inquire of our external auditors and our management to make sure that we have a clear understanding of what's out there. Okay. So thank you, but I do have some questions for you on the actual report itself. And the first one is on page 11, which is Exhibit A1, and it's management discussion and analysis. So I'm not sure if you guys are prepared to answer that, but It's more a curiosity, it's more trying to, because, this is the first time we see our numbers in this format. So, there should, a lot of questions that came about that I have. And one is on your net position, the unrestricted balance of 669 or around $670 million. Do we have the composition of what makes that amount up? Because according to the footnote here, the department's unrestricted portion of net position is available for future use to provide program services. And I want to make sure that the committee and the board understands what it is, what's in this amount, and if this amount can be used for any services or programs that we feel that we should be supporting.
There isn't anything that I would say that brings it up directly, but I'll say the majority of it, you can almost see it if you take a look at the balance sheet on the governmental funds on page 17. Because there is a relationship between the fund financial statements and the government-wide.
Okay, so what am I looking at this point? The fund balances.
Yeah, the fund balances. So you can see what funds make up these fund balances. So you'll see like general fund will have like basically a deficit, and then the federal funds, there's like 141 million.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so that's basically comprised of federal grants. So that's probably a lot of the programs that they're talking about. Then there's capital projects that has $624 million. And so that's basically, basic construction projects. So that will account for the bulk of.
Okay. But if we look on page 12, which is the next page over, it's a fiscal year ended June 30th, and it shows how that 418 million is derived. And if you look at the comparison of activities from 16 to 15, $281 million of that came from the state allotted appropriations. So the question that I would have is, does that mean that we didn't spend what was allocated to us and therefore we have an excess and therefore we can use it? Because it's unrestricted, we can use it for whatever purposes we deem appropriate.
Well, the BOE is allowed to carry over 5%.
Right, the 5% equals 45 million, though. We're looking at 418 million. Amy, let me ask the question, because Amy is here. Amy, would you, I don't expect you to answer it off the cuff, so if you need time to get back to us, that's fine as well. I just, I want you to put you on the spot, but it's just more a curiosity question as I look at the financials.
So I would need to look at specifically what the growth on that number is, that 280 million.
Yeah, it grew 212 million, 213 million.
I can look into that on some of the drivers of that.
Yeah, I get the question, the bottom line question, Amy, is that in the report it states that it's unrestricted and we can use for future programs and services. So I just want to be clear from the committee and then the board's perspective, if we do have that money that we can use for other things. Example, funding some of our non-allocated budget items, things like that. I'm sure you're going to look at that, but I just wanted to make sure, is that the number that we should be looking at?
I mean, that the 212 seems, our carryover amount, I could look, but I want to say it was under $30 million.
It was 45 million, according to the financials.
Okay. So most of that is in weighted student formula.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't take that money back, that just stays in WSF. So the majority of that carryover is in weighted student formula. So, and keep in mind too, these are financial statements as of June 30, 2016, and we're 9 months beyond that, right?
So would you, when you have some time, give us maybe a reconciliation? I I just want to get a better understanding that of what these amounts are and if, in fact, we can use that, if it's not taken, basically.
Okay,
So that's the purpose of the question.
okay.
And then, on page 13, we talk about agency funds. I just want to make sure that, I know Denise and her department has allocated hours to actually audit these funds. And during the audit, you folks went in and audited as well. So are you satisfied that the procedures that's in place is sufficient? Because, $26 million is a lot of money. And I was really surprised by that amount.
Yes, we go through and audit the agency funds also.
It's on a sample basis, so yeah.
Yes.
So do you coordinate your work with the internal audit department?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Okay. On page 15, what is our accounts receivable of $10.8 million? Why would we have accounts receivables? Because we already have from the federal government, other agencies, but this sort of just stands out there. Is there a footnote to that? I didn't see one. Maybe I didn't catch it.
I don't think there's a footnote for that. The bulk of it will be from the school food services.
School
branch.
food services.
School food service branch, in which they charge for the meal served to other agencies.
Oh. What is the amount due from other agencies? That's a different amount entirely. Or,
We would have to get back to you.
no, Amy, can you get back to me?
I'll get back to you
Okay.
on both of those.
Can you add, see what the delinquency is to?
So, I mean,
Hello,
the
Mr.
school
Dillingham.
food service one is definitely just the timing on, that's the federal government on the free and reduced lunch one that we're expecting. Is that right?
Oh, the due from federal government? Yeah.
Okay. Page 16, this is just another need to know kind of question. The non-imposed employee wages and fringe benefit 538, 637 is included in revenues. I know it's also included in expenses because it's an offset, correct? But where is it in your expenses? Is it in school related? Where is that number? There.
Actually, it's kind of like within three categories: the school-related, state complex administration, and the public libraries.
Okay.
Wherever there's personnel costs.
Okay, so that is allocated. Okay. Okay. On page 19, other financing sources, uses, transfers in and transfers out. So we're transferring $1 million from capital projects, and we're transferring it to where?
Actually, the transfer, if you take a look at the transfer in, transfer out, if you take a look at on the federal, there's a transfer out of 1.69,
Yeah,
and then you'll see the exact same amount in the
Other.
So it's
Yeah.
really a transfer between the federal and the other.
yeah.
So that transfer is basically for workers' comp.
I got it. But I was asking about the capital projects, $1 million.
The $1 million is transferred out to the state for the works of arts.
For the
Because then
work.
there's a state law that you have to put in a certain percentage for
Oh,
works of art. And
when you
so-
purchase the art pieces. Okay. Okay, getting there, to page 20. We have loss and disposal of capital assets, and my question is, how do we get a loss and disposal of capital assets?
That will generally occur that if you have to dispose of an asset that has not been fully depreciated.
Right, so that was my question. So what assets are we disposing that haven't been fully depreciated? You don't know?
We don't have the specifics.
Okay, can we put that down as another? Okay, getting to the end. Page 33, capital assets. I was trying to, in my mind, I was just trying to reconcile this when on the construction in progress. When you take it out, you normally put it into a capital assets been depreciated. So I see 214 being taken out, but I can't reconcile the 214 going to capital assets being depreciated.
Not all of the additions for capital assets is through construction in progress. Some of them are direct purchases.
Yeah, so you would think that the additions would be higher, but it's actually lower. In those buildings and improvements and furniture and fixtures. If it was higher, I could see that, but it's lower. So I'm thinking, did we do something with those reclassifications in construction? Where would it go? Because it wouldn't go to vehicles, it wouldn't go to land improvements, and it wouldn't go to public library materials. So the only two categories would be building and improvements, furniture and equipment. And the total for those two additions was $206 million, but we took $214 million out. So I'm missing $8 million someplace. Okay, just note it. I mean, it's just, I'm sure there's an answer to it. I just don't know what it is.
I believe some of those that originally are in CIP end up getting expensed prior to being capitalized.
Okay, so why would it be expense?
Because perhaps they're looking at the project and it's not something that they would continue to do. So those
Okay, so then therefore I would like to see that, because if we're doing that and we have capital projects that you feel that, or we feel that we shouldn't be doing and we expense it, that means isn't that a waste of money for us? I just want to know. So can you
get the details?
And on page 37, and I think I know the answer to this, but why are we including police officers and firefighters, retirement benefits in our footnotes? There's several references to them, and I think it's because we're under the general plan, right? And therefore, but even if we are, why do we put them in? It doesn't relate to our financials, so why do we put them in? We don't need to know what the multiplier is, and the maximum 80% of average final compensation, do we? No?
Yeah. We don't.
Yeah, so shouldn't that be excluded?
Well, this is just a general state policy on the retirement benefits that's included. So yes, it could be excluded.
Right. So the report is issued, all right? It's already issued.
Yes, the report is already issued.
Can we make note for next year that maybe, let's take it out of a footnote, because it's pretty confusing to have the firefighters and the police department on our footnote for the DOE, so. Okay. Okay. Any questions from committee members, other questions? If not, I'd like to entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the report as prepared.
Any second? All in favor, say aye. Okay. The motion has been approved. Thank you so much, guys. I'm sorry to ask you all the detailed questions, but it's the first time I'm looking at this format. So.
I'd like to thank Amy and her staff for all their cooperation in the process of the audit, so it made it much easier and able to complete it on time. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Lawrence. Thank you, Carol. Yeah. Do we have any public testimony on our remaining agenda items today, Gina?
No, we do not, Vice Chair.
Since there is no public testimony, we will move on to the approval of the minutes. In your meeting packets are the minutes of the February 7, 2017 Audit Committee meeting. Please take a moment to review them. If there are no revisions, can I get a motion and a second to approve the minutes?
Mr. Chair, I move approval.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes have been approved. Thank you. We'll now move on to the presentation of our only discussion item, the Department of Education's Internal Audit Plan, quarterly update through March 31st, 2017. I would like to call on Denise Yoshida, Director of Internal Audit Office, to present on this item.
Good morning. Denise?
Good morning, Chair. Denise Yoshida, Interim Audit Director. Okay, so today we have the quarterly update for January 1st to March 31st, 2017. I guess you have your reports in front of you. Okay. So I'll briefly go through the summary. Page 1 and page 2 is the executive summary of the projects that we worked on during this period. The assurance projects included that student assessment, admin review, phase 2, and the casual hire payroll processes follow-up review, which we presented last quarter. We also started the investigation process review this quarter, and we worked on baseline assurance projects. And we're going to be changing the name of baseline assurance projects to school-based reviews because this includes like your local school fund audits and the school monitoring project that we started as we look at some appropriated funded accounts at the school level. We also provided some internal control consultation to the schools. For the consulting, investigation, and other projects, we monitored the management action plans of the DOE management. These included audit findings that were found as a result of the audits that we've performed that are still outstanding. So if in the back of your report, Appendix A1 to Appendix A10 are the listing of those outstanding audit findings. We also worked on, we followed up actually on the standard practice project with the superintendent's office. Most of the offices have revised or updated their SPs, and I believe OHR had put a hold on it until the negotiations were over, and so now that they're over, they'll begin completing theirs or revising theirs. The Fraud and Ethics Hotline is alive and well. We continue to receive calls and web intakes. And just to let you know, it has gone up. There's an increase in calls and intakes. But we'll get to that when we get to that area. We also have these fiscal reviews that we do. For those of you that don't know what the fiscal reviews are, we used to do fiscal investigations, and it got a little confusing with the administrative investigations that the personnel actions are based on. And so our area covers only fiscal reviews, which are the fact-finding of allegations of fiscal abuse. So those are called fiscal reviews. We've been working on several of those this quarter. In addition to that, you just had NEK present to you the audit report. We help coordinate that and help them get the samples from the schools. We also worked on the risk assessment for the department and completed a new audit plan, which will be presented right after this. Okay, so on page 4, okay, so on page 3, there's a dashboard. It's the explanation of the ratings, and on page 4 and 5, you'll see all the outstanding findings, as well as the ratings, type of findings, the completion status, and the contact of the DOE personnel. Page 6 and 7 are the common observations of systemic issues that are found from the past reviews. And again, I always make note of this, but as you can see from the beginning, which is the bottom of page 7, all the way to the top of page 6, which is the latest review that we've worked on, you can see how the department has addressed a lot of these common observations.
Just a comment on that, because I really like what you did on this thing, and I agree with you. But what I did was I looked at the last 5 that you did, and so if you look at the percent of totals, it's 92%, 46%, 29%, as far as the common observations. And you can see that for the last 5, the lack of oversight and monitoring was 80% versus 92%, and was 0% for lack of policies and procedures and segregation of duties, and also insufficient training and lack of compliance. We're at 40%. So you can see that the percentages are dropping. And so just to support your comments, but it's still a concern to us as far as the lack of oversight and monitoring. I mean, it's at 92%. So if we took the last 10, we would be at 90%. So you can see that that's still an area that is we should be concerned about. But the others, I can see we're making really good progress on it. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay. On page 8, you'll see a summary of the projects. And you'll see, let's see, when they're scheduled for, when they were actually performed, and the hours taken to complete. And I'd like to call your attention to a couple items. Let's see, the investigation process review. It was supposed to start in November of 2016. However, we have a personnel shortage in our area, which hopefully should be filled by next month. We had some sick leaves and some vacations. We had an increase in hotline calls, an increase in fiscal review requests. So the project got delayed and was started in March of this year. Also of note, there's a footnote, number 5. There's 3 items that you can see, the number 5 on the outside of the chart. These, we went over budget, and the reason is we're trying to cross-train some of the staff to do these different areas, and so it took more time than we had budgeted, and so that's the explanation for the over budget. Okay.
So Denise, in the over budget, does it result in overtime, or you just absorb it in your total budget, right?
Right.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you.
Okay, then from page 9 to page 15, these are summaries of the Fraud and Ethics Hotline. On page 9, you'll see that we kind of dropped off the very beginning, and we just have the last 3 fiscal years. There was 378 cases in the last 3 most current years. Of that, 361 are closed and 17 of them are still open. On page 10, you'll see the areas where these calls are being handled by. On page 11, you'll see the 17 outstanding cases and the status. And keep in mind that we are the mechanism, the confidential mechanism that the department has for intake of complaints. There are other mechanisms that the department has to receive complaints. And what we do in the internal audit area is we receive the complaints, we vet it, and then we make the assignments, and then we monitor the complaints. So let's say it's assigned to the CAS or the AS, we'll, I guess, follow up with them. They'll make a determination. Does it rise to the level of an investigation, or is it a management issue? And they're letting us know that within 10 days. And then from there, we monitor the case until it's closed. Okay, then the rest of the 3-4 pages are just charts of by priority, by case type, closed accounts, and if those cases were substantiated, and how the disposition of the cases were terminated, verbal warning, and so on. Okay, then behind the blue sheet are the summary of the projects that have outstanding findings. Did you have any questions?
Does the committee have any questions? If not, thank you so much, Denise. Excellent job. Oh, okay, let me introduce the next item for you. Finally, we have action on the Department of Education's updated risk assessment and general audit plan, July 1st, 2017 to June 3rd, 2020. I would like to again call on Denise Yoshida to provide a presentation on this agenda item.
Chen, she's the audit specialist, and what we do is we rotate the person in charge of the risk assessments for the new audit plan. So this time it's Steve. Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, so this plan covers 3 fiscal years, July 1, 2017 through June 30th, 2010. And in preparing this, we followed the professional standards developed by the Institute of General Auditors, which requires that the audit plan be developed based on a risk assessment. Okay, so I'd like to take 1 minute to kind of go over the process that was followed on page 12. So it's depicted there. We identify the audit universe and we discuss with management if there are any new areas or changes to the auditable areas. And then we update any key risks and concerns and issues. We do this by interviewing senior management and Board of Education. And we also look at new and emerging risks relevant to the DOE. Then we prioritize these risks and concerns and issues. We rank them or re-rank them when we do a risk reassessment of the risk assessment. And it's in importance like high, medium, and low kind of auditable area. And then the new audit plan is developed and presented to you for approval. So that's what we're here for today. Okay, so if you could turn back to page 6. So page 6, you'll see the proposed assurance projects. And other high-risk areas are on a watch list on page 7. Did you want to take a moment to look at?
No, the committee should have already reviewed the documentation, so
Okay.
it's okay to go ahead.
Okay. So the details for the assurance projects listed on page 6 are from page 26 to page 42. You'll see details of the projects, a little more detail of what we'll be looking at. And keep in mind that each of these projects, when we go in to do them, we do another risk assessment within that area. So you'll see the detail of that, how many hours it should take, and what areas we'll be working on. Let's see, page 8 and page 9 show changes to the audit plan and changes to the auditable areas. This includes things like if the department reorganized or changed the name of a certain office or area. So that's all noted there, as well as if through our risk assessment and interviews, it was found that there was increased risk or decreased risk, it's also taken into consideration when we rank the areas. And some may go up from medium to high, or some may go down from high to low, or depending on the situation. So these are the different changes summarized again on page 8 and 9. Then page 10 through page 18 detail the methodology of the risk assessment, so I'm not going to go into detail of that because I kind of gave you the overview. But on page 19, you may be interested to see 19 through 23. You'll be able to see the high, medium, and low ranking for the auditable areas in the different offices, branches. Then page 43 to 49 are the appendices with relevant risk definitions. Are there any questions?
Are there any questions? Mr. De Lima?
I understand what you're doing, but as Mr. Wimmer was talking to the auditors, I started to think to myself, gee,
this is like the third meeting that we've had where we talked about fund balances as to what are we using our fund balance for, and you know, what's the ability for us to, when is it being reprogrammed? Who's approving the reprogramming of these fund balances? It's a significant amount of money. 45 million, 35 million, 30 million is the weighted student formula. They're retaining it. What are they using it for? I mean, I think we should, in this time when our legislature is not providing us our full request because of fiscal constraints, it might be wise for us to revisit the audit plan in terms of looking at how monies are being spent by the department and concentrate on whether there's places that we can recapture. Like, for example, today the 10.8 million receivables for food service for outside agencies. I mean, to be frank, I'm glad Mr. Umar is highlighting that for us, because quite frankly, if we're not getting monies and it's not, agencies are not paying us, that's something that would, I mean, if we recaptured $1 million, that could fund the Office of Strategy, which the legislature decided not to fund. So, so that's one aspect I was thinking about as we talked about the plan. The second aspect I was concerned about was we see reports of how booster clubs, which are not DOE funds, booster clubs, it's like an annual event. Some community gets ripped off by a bad parent who's probably having their own personal struggles. You know, do we provide principals perhaps a primer that they can give to their booster clubs as to things that they should check and double check in order to protect the monies of the students whose parents and community members are supporting? Is there a primer that we can maybe provide, a checklist? It wouldn't take a lot of hours, you know, just something that we could do in terms of the audit to help principals coach their parent booster club organizations on things that they could do as a matter of routine to protect their booster funds. I would like us to spend some time helping schools protect their community funds, because I'm just kind of sick of reading stories. On our island, Waikiki Intermediate Ukulele Band got ripped off about 30 grand. And that was very devastating. So that'd be my only other suggestion of something that maybe we can spend some time on. It wouldn't take a lot of hours, that we can just roll out by sending an email to the 256 principals. And if they had questions, maybe during the training, the annual training, that could be a part of the process. Those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Mr. Dillingham. Just as you know, the committee members have read your excellent plan, and I personally enjoy reading it and discussing it with you. So, but that's just me. So, but I think we should also remind the committee members that we should be looking at the validity of the projects, the timing of when the project should be included by priority, and any additions or deletions from the list of projects, such as what Mr. DeLima just mentioned. So, committee members, if there's any questions, additions, or deletions that you want to add to this audit plan, please do so now. But you can also do it later. I mean, this plan is our annual plan, but it's also a flexible one, because the projects that we do are for this year, for next year, so it's spread out for to 2020. So one of the things that I wanted to ask Denise and her staff is, we do know that some things were cut out, were not approved in the budget. The hotline was not approved. The outside consultants were not approved. So, those are all the things that you need to absorb within your budget. And so the question for you on your staffing side is do you have the sufficient staffing now to complete your audit plan? Or if we say, could you use another staff and could you now do 5 or 6 projects a year versus 4 projects a year? I mean, that's something that if you could think about it, and then we can talk about it privately later. But it's something that I just want for you to think about, that we should start looking at things like that. Or if you haven't already, we can discuss it. Okay. So committee, can I entertain a motion to accept the plan?
Mr. Chair, I so moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion has been approved. Thank you. Thank you. There is no other agendized business, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn. All in favor? Opposed? I didn't wait for the motion, by the way. At 10:28, the meeting is adjourned.